The black sedan rolled slowly up the curved driveway of the Grand Imperial Hotel. Its polished hood reflected the golden glow of the chandeliers that hung above the entrance. A Friday evening in the heart of the city meant the lobby was alive with movement, guests arriving for charity galas, businessmen stepping out for late dinners, couples dressed in evening wear laughing as they walked past the marble columns. When the car stopped, Marcus stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed simply in dark jeans and a well-worn leather jacket. He didn't look like the typical clientele, no designer suit, no gold watch, no flash. Only the calm confidence in his stride set him apart. Before he could take more than 2 steps, a valet in a crisp red jacket hurried forward. The young man, barely out of college, glanced at the sedan, then at Marcus. His eyebrows rose. With a crooked smile he asked, half joking, half accusing, "Is that your car?" The words cut sharper than they were meant to. Marcus paused, staring at the valet. Behind the young man, a couple waiting for their own car smirked quietly, as if the question had confirmed something they already believed: a black man in a luxury car must not belong here. Marcus took a slow breath. He had heard variations of this line too many times before. Sometimes at airports, sometimes at golf clubs, sometimes in boardrooms. Tonight, though, the sting was heavier. He was not a guest here, he was here for something far more significant. But he said nothing. Instead, he handed the valet his keys with steady hands and replied evenly, "Yes. It's mine." The valet hesitated for a moment, almost doubting him, before taking the keys. Marcus walked past, his back straight, his face unreadable. Inside, the glittering hotel doors opened, spilling warmth and music into the cool evening air. What no one yet realized was that Marcus was not simply a man arriving for an event. He was the man who owned the building above their heads, the entire hotel chain whose name shone in gold letters on the facade. And before the night was over, every single person in that lobby would know it. The lobby of the Grand Imperial was designed to impress: polished marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers, walls lined with gilded mirrors, and a sweeping staircase that curved upward like something from a palace. Marcus stepped inside, letting the heavy glass doors close behind him. A wave of warmth and perfume-laced air washed over him, along with the hum of conversation and clinking glasses. He walked toward the reception desk, his stride steady, his gaze calm. Yet he felt it immediately: the subtle tightening of shoulders, the sidelong glances, the silence that fell in certain corners as eyes turned to him. He had entered rooms like this before. He knew the script. The hotel security guard, standing near the concierge desk, stiffened. His hand instinctively brushed the radio clip to his belt. He watched Marcus as if waiting for him to step out of line. At the reception, a young woman in a sharp navy uniform smiled at the couple ahead of him, offering champagne vouchers with a practiced warmth. But when Marcus approached, her smile faltered. "Good evening, sir," she said, her tone polite but cool. "Can I help you with something?" "Help you?" The words were deliberate, distant, as though he were lost, as though he couldn't possibly belong. Marcus held her gaze. "I have a reservation," he said simply. She asked for his ID, scrutinizing it longer than necessary, her fingers lingering on the plastic as if to double-check its authenticity. Only then did she hand him the room key with a clipped "Enjoy your stay." Marcus pocketed the key and turned toward the elevators. On his way, a waitress carrying a tray of champagne flutes passed by. She offered glasses to the well-dressed guest chatting near the fountain but skipped him entirely, sweeping past as though he were invisible. He noticed. He always noticed. At the base of the grand staircase, 2 men in tailored suits glanced at him, then leaned in toward each other. One whispered, the other chuckled softly, eyes following Marcus as he walked past. Their laughter was low, but he didn't need to hear the words. He had lived this scene too many times. Marcus pressed the elevator button and waited. Outwardly, he was composed, expressionless, the very picture of control. But inside, the familiar weight pressed on him. Not anger, not yet, but the cold heaviness of being judged before you speak, dismissed before you act. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Marcus stepped inside alone. As the door slid shut, cutting him off from the stares and smirks of the lobby, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The invisible walls of prejudice were all around him. He had spent his life learning how to walk through them without breaking stride. But tonight, he wondered how many more of these walls he would be asked to pass before people finally saw him for who he truly was. The elevator hummed softly as it carried Marcus upward, floor by floor, its mirrored walls reflecting his stoic face back at him. For a moment, he allowed himself to lean against the brass railing, eyes half closed. The murmur of the lobby still echoed in his mind, the doubt, the suspicion, the way every glance had carried the same silent verdict. He had grown used to it. But never numb. As the numbers ticked higher, his thoughts drifted backward, unbidden, to a small kitchen in the cramped apartment of his childhood. His mother stood at the stove, stirring a pot of soup that stretched too thin for 3 children. Her voice was soft but firm as she spoke to him, words etched forever in his memory. "You will have to be twice as good, Marcus. Twice as good just to get half as far. Don't you ever forget that." He remembered how her eyes had glistened, not with defeat, but with determination. She had worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, so her children could have more than she did. And she made sure they knew the world outside would not welcome them kindly. A flash of another memory, Marcus at 16, sitting in a classroom, raising his hand to answer. The teacher hesitated, then called on another student, a white boy who repeated Marcus's exact words minutes later. This time the teacher smiled and said, "Excellent point." Marcus had bitten his tongue so hard he tasted blood. Another memory, his first job interview in a stiff suit borrowed from a cousin. The manager looked him up and down and asked, "Do you really think you'd fit in with our team culture?" Marcus had smiled politely, swallowed the insult, and walked out with his head held high. The elevator dinged. Marcus opened his eyes. His reflection stared back at him, not the skinny boy from the apartment, not the overlooked student, not the dismissed candidate, but the man he had fought to become. The man who had built an empire with his own hands, who owned not just this hotel, but dozens like it across the country. And yet, he thought, as the door slid open to a hallway lined with plush carpet and golden sconces, some people would never see past the skin. To them, he would always be the boy who didn't belong in the room. Marcus straightened his jacket, his jaw tightening. His mother's voice echoed once more in his ears. "Twice as good, Marcus. Twice as strong." He stepped forward, ready to face whatever else the night had prepared for him. The banquet hall glittered like a jewel box, its chandeliers spilling warm light over a sea of tuxedos and gowns. Crystal glasses clinked, waiters glided silently between tables, and the low hum of conversations floated through the air like music. The hotel's wealthiest patrons had gathered for the evening's gala, a fundraiser wrapped in elegance, prestige, and subtle competition. Marcus entered quietly, his dark jacket blending in, though his skin, his very presence, still drew eyes. Heads turned, some curious, some skeptical. He knew the looks. He'd seen them in boardrooms, restaurants, country clubs. Always the same question hidden in their stares: what is he doing here? He crossed the room toward the open bar. A circle of men in tailored suits stood nearby, laughing loudly, their drinks held like props in some old play. As Marcus passed, one of them, gray-haired, ruddy-faced, with the casual arrogance of someone who had never been told no, spoke louder than necessary, ensuring his words would carry. "Well," the man drawled, his companions already smirking, "I see the valet staff are starting to dress sharper these days." The laughter came quick and cruel. Sharp as broken glass. Marcus froze for the briefest moment. He could feel every gaze in the room pulling toward him, some amused, some embarrassed, some indifferent. The sting wasn't new. He had grown calluses over the years. But tonight, the cut went deeper because of where he was, his hotel. One of the men added, with mock sincerity, "Maybe he can park my Bentley later. Save me the trouble." The group erupted again. A woman in a diamond necklace, standing just a few feet away, glanced at Marcus with a small frown, then quickly looked away, unwilling to intervene. No one ever intervened. Marcus's fists clenched at his sides, but his face remained composed, his silence deliberate. He could have answered, he could have burned them with words, cut deeper than their shallow cruelty, but he didn't. Not yet. He locked eyes with the ringleader, the older man whose laughter rang the loudest. Marcus didn't smile. Didn't frown. He simply looked at him with the steady calm of someone who knew something the other man didn't. Something that would unravel all of this petty theater. The man shifted uncomfortably under Marcus's gaze, though he tried to laugh it off. The moment stretched, then passed, as Marcus turned and walked toward the far side of the room. Inside, though, a fire had been lit. He had endured enough for one night. And soon, very soon, they would see exactly who he was. The gala swelled with chatter, glasses clinking and music drifting from the grand piano in the corner. Marcus lingered near the edge of the ballroom, his face calm, his body still, but inside him the fire from the public insult burned steady and bright. He waited, watching. At the center of the room, a stage had been set up with a polished mahogany podium. A velvet banner bearing the hotel's crest hung behind it, and spotlights warmed the golden letters. Soon, the evening's program would begin: speeches, acknowledgments, a toast to the success of the Grand Imperial's legacy. The general manager, a tall man in a tuxedo with a self-important stride, stepped onto the stage and tapped the microphone. The room quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth, "thank you for joining us tonight for this special occasion. As you know, the Grand Imperial stands as a beacon of luxury, of tradition, and of excellence in hospitality." A round of polite applause followed. The manager continued, smiling broadly, "But tonight is especially meaningful, because we have the great honor of being joined by the visionary who owns not just this hotel, but the entire chain of Grand Imperial hotels across the United States. A man whose leadership and success have made this brand what it is today." The crowd leaned in, expectant. Some whispered, anticipating the entrance of an old money magnate, a familiar face from society pages. The manager spread his arm toward the side of the stage. "Please welcome Mr. Marcus Ellison." The name hung in the air. For a heartbeat, the crowd seemed frozen, eyes darting in confusion. Then Marcus stepped forward. His stride was steady, deliberate, unhurried. He mounted the stage, the lights catching his face, his dark jacket, his calm eyes. Gasps rippled through the room. A champagne flute slipped from someone's hand and shattered softly against the marble. The men who had laughed at him earlier stood stiff, their mouths slightly open, the color draining from their faces. Marcus reached the podium and rested his hands on either side. He looked out at the sea of stunned expressions. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the chandelier lights above. He let them look. Let them see. And when he spoke, his voice was firm, measured, carrying the weight of truth. "Good evening. I'm proud to welcome you to my hotel." The words fell like stone into water, sending ripples through every corner of the room. Some faces shifted quickly into forced smiles, applause stumbling to life. Others remained shocked, their arrogance stripped away in a single instant. Marcus stood tall, unflinching, his mother's words echoing in his mind. Tonight, the masks had been torn away. And the real balance of power was finally revealed. The applause trickled into uneasy quiet. Some clapped out of politeness, some out of panic, but the sound carried no conviction. The room was caught between disbelief and shame, every face betraying its own story: embarrassment, regret, anger, or denial. Marcus stood at the podium, letting the silence linger. He looked slowly across the ballroom, his eyes passing over the men who had mocked him, the waitress who had ignored him, the guard who had eyed him like a trespasser. He saw them all, and he let them know it. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, deliberate, each word striking like a hammer on glass. "Many of you looked at me tonight and saw only what you wanted to see. A valet. A stranger. Someone who didn't belong. You didn't see me. You didn't see the man who built this place, brick by brick, deal by deal, sacrifice after sacrifice." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some lowered their eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Marcus continued, his tone steady, neither raised nor trembling. "I know what it is to be doubted. I know what it is to walk into a room and be judged before I speak a word. That's not new. That's America. But what I also know is that resilience is stronger than prejudice. And dignity will outlast cruelty." The hall was silent now, utterly still. Even the waiters had stopped moving. "This hotel, my hotel, is open to all. Black, white, rich, poor, believer, skeptic. But I will tell you what is not welcome here: hate, disrespect, the poison of small minds. If you walk through these doors, you will leave that behind." For a moment, Marcus stepped back from the microphone, letting his words settle. He didn't smile. He didn't soften. He simply stood there, the embodiment of quiet strength. Then, almost as if on cue, the applause began again, different this time. Hesitant at first, but growing, building, as some in the crowd rose to their feet. Not all, not even most, but enough to fill the room with a sound that could not be ignored. Marcus nodded once, a simple gesture, then stepped down from the podium. He didn't need to say more. His presence had spoken for him. The walls that had pressed in on him all evening were still there, invisible and heavy, but tonight, cracks had formed. And through those cracks, a new kind of light began to shine. The gala wound down, the music softening, the guests dispersing in small groups, some still murmuring about what they had witnessed, others already trying to pretend it hadn't happened. Marcus moved through the ballroom without hurry, shaking a few hands, accepting congratulations from those who now rushed to align themselves with him. But he knew which smiles were genuine, and which were simply masks reshaped by power. He had seen enough of both in his lifetime. Stepping back into the cool night air, Marcus paused at the hotel entrance. His car had been pulled up to the front, its headlights glowing faintly in the dark. The young valet stood beside it, the same one who had asked that cutting question hours earlier. The boy's face was pale, his posture rigid, his red jacket seeming too heavy for his shoulders. When Marcus approached, he swallowed hard and said quietly, "Sir, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said what I did. I didn't know." Marcus held up a hand, stopping him. His gaze was steady, but not unkind. "You didn't need to know who I was," Marcus said. "You only needed to see me. That's what you missed." The boy lowered his head, shame rising in his cheeks. Marcus let the silence hang a moment, then added, his voice firm but not cruel. "Learn this now. Don't judge a man by the skin he wears or the car he drives. See him for who he is. You'll live a better life if you do." The valet nodded quickly, his eyes wet. Marcus placed the keys gently into his hand. "Take care of yourself," he said, before sliding into the driver's seat. The engine hummed to life. Marcus pulled slowly away from the grand entrance, the golden letters of the hotel name glowing above him in the rear-view mirror. He thought of his mother, of her voice, of the words that had carried him through every locked door and every closed heart, twice as strong. Tonight, he had been. And as the city lights stretched before him, Marcus knew this was more than his victory. It was proof that dignity, when held firm, could outshine the heaviest shadow of hate. The night felt lighter as he drove on, the story of what had happened already beginning to take root. A story not of humiliation, but of resilience. Not of defeat, but of justice. A story with a hard beginning, and a hopeful end.